Shovel Knight is an action platformer developed by Yacht Club Games that I first noticed on Kickstarter back in March of last year. It was said to be heavily inspired by some of the action platforming titans of the NES, like Castlevania, Megaman, and Super Mario 3.
And upon reading that, my immediate reaction was, ooh, sign me up! Those games are classics and easily some of my favorite games for the NES. Mega Man 3 in particular has always had a special place in my heart, because it was one of the first video games I ever played as a kid. The game has tight controls, iconic music, and provides just the right amount of challenge while guiding the player through its intuitive level design. It has been my top 3 favorite video games for as long as I can remember, but the game came out a few years before I was born, and I've always wondered what it would have been like to play a game like Mega Man 3 when it was first released. Enter Shovel Knight.
The game came out last week after a year of waiting and wondering whether this game would be a disappointing ripoff of the classics or stand up on its own as a unique and engaging action platformer.
If I wanted more Mega Man,
I'd just play more Mega Man.
To say the least, my expectations were pretty high for this game.
Shovel Knight easily stands on its own, providing engaging platforming puzzles, beautiful environments, fluid gameplay, excellent pacing, memorable characters, intense boss battles, and strong level design that balances the difficulty and accessibility of its challenges very well. And holy crap if it isn't a blast to play. Narrative. What is Shovel Knight about? Just based off the name, it sounds kinda silly. Is it about gardening? Is it about the manure man's graveyard shift? No, it's not. Let's just watch this PowerPoint presentation to find out. Yay, it's everybody's favorite part of school. We see our titular hero making some fat stacks with his lady pal, but getting a little greedy and opening up, plot device thing. In the ensuing chaos, Shield Knight, the aforementioned lady pal, is nowhere to be found, and grief-stricken Shovel Knight secludes himself to his hovel and goes back to using his shovel the way we uninvented peasants use them. But then, the Enchantress and her Order of No Quarter were all like, oh my gosh, Shovel Knight's gone, you guys. Let's take a family photo. I mean, can you see how nice their land looks? Let's take over everything. And then Shovel Knight was all like, why the heck does it get smoky every time evil takes over? I mean, whoa, nothing settles my grief quite like defending the helpless.
And so the journey begins.
Nicey, most action platformers of Mega Man's ilk aren't telling the most complex stories out there. You are a robot. This guy's bad. He has 8 bad robots. Beat the robots. Find bad guy's lair. Beat robots again. Beat big bad scientist. Repeat for 10 more iterations of the series. The goals and objectives are clearly stated. For the most part, Shovel Knight follows the same structure. She is bad. She has 8 bad knights. Beat the bad knights. Find the bad guy's lair. You get the point. However, every character in Shovel Knight seems to have a bit more personality than the characters in Mega Man. The members of the Order of No Quarter all have very unique appearances, mannerisms, and quirks. Even if they're a mole or,
Is that a bird or is he wearing a mask?
they feel human and each convey a bit of their own motivations and relationships with the hero. Popeller Knight seems to have been an old buddy of Shovel Knight's, perhaps one that's following the same code of chivalry. Propeller Knight has the most class of the Order. I mean, he's got a French accent and drops a rose when he dies. This guy might have a bit of an inferiority complex. Hey, come on, man, this is unfair. Well, hang on a second, man, let's talk about this. And Proto Man, I mean Dark Knight, has his own mysterious motives for delaying the advances of Shovel Knight. In Mega Man, the bosses lack any of that character or humanity. They're all just robots. Oh, wait. Robots. Can't love.
Beyond the bosses, the peaceful inhabitants of the overworld are very unique as well.
You've got happy people, dancy people, people who go apeshit when they want to sell you stuff, platform people, deer people, horse people, goats? That's just a goat in a robe, man. I saw him eat that paper. Frog people who love puns, frog people who hate puns and have just had it up to here with your garbage. This guy's my favorite. You pledge your loyalty to him and he does a little dance and gives you his wonder healing spit. I love this guy. That pretty much covers the townsfolk and, wait, what? Shovel Knight. Fish. Head. Shovelfish? I'm gonna be sick.
Now don't get me wrong, Shovel Knight is not telling the most inspiring, insightful, or heartfelt story out there. Save the damsel in distress. Defeat the big bad witch. They're both as old as dirt. But I came into this game expecting about as much story as Mega Man had. Not that much. Instead, I encountered a lot of memorable characters, was given a goal to pursue that kept me interested throughout the whole game, and the gameplay does an awesome job of reinforcing that goal. Keep that in mind, we're going to be talking about that later.
Art and atmosphere.
Art and music are valuable tools in the game developer's arsenal to set a tone, make the player feel something, get the attention of the player, and make the gaming atmosphere more immersive. So let's take a few seconds to listen and watch the first few moments of gameplay in Shovel Knight.
Ooh, this is gonna be good! Any good story in literature, film, or otherwise has a valuable opportunity to grab the interest of the audience within the first few minutes of engagement. Within the first few seconds of playing Shovel Knight, this is what I heard. I was immediately swept into a tune that was heroic, motivating, and brimming with energy. It didn't matter that the only enemies in my way were beetles. The mood was set and I leapt eagerly into the adventure while headbanging along. And it doesn't stop after the first level. Every stage in this game has awesome music. All of the art in this game just pops with vibrant colors, but not in an overwhelming way. To illustrate an example from one of Shovel Knight's predecessors, the original Castlevania for NES had awesome artwork for its time. That was both colorful and detailed. But all these bright oranges and purples are just plain hard to look at in comparison to this. Ugh, my eyes! God! My eyes! Granted, Shovel Knight is not burdened with the memory limitations of the NES and can utilize larger, more detailed sprites, but it uses virtually the same color palette. With a few modern tweaks, Shovel Knight captures the soul of NES artwork and music and polishes it substantially. I simply have not seen a game in 8-bit style that looks as good or sounds as good as Shovel Knight. Maybe they're out there, but I haven't seen them. Now, I'm not much of an artist, so that's all I can really say about the art from a technical standpoint.
What I want to discuss primarily about Shovel Knight's artwork and music is whether or not they successfully blend together with the environment of the stages to convince the player that they are traveling across a vast world and not just a set of platforms.
Spoiler, it does. It's clear that the villages in this game are based off the towns in Legend of Zelda 2, but the amount of unique sprites to use and the amount of detail put into each one makes the villages in Shovel Knight very vibrant and inviting. You don't have copies of the same 3 people walking back and forth and saying they know nothing. You can't say you know nothing, lady. I just ran into you 30 seconds ago and you gave me all kinds of life advice. The villagers play a small part in reinforcing the goals of the game, too. Many of the villagers talk about how their lives were uprooted as a result of the invasion of the Order. And when you succeed in liberating a portion of the land, the villagers actually react to it and thank you for it. That serves to build up an atmosphere within the game and does a lot more for the narrative than Hammer, Spectacle Rock, Death Mountain. That's some riveting stuff you're laying on me, lady. In Pridemore Keep, you'll hear the regal tune of trumpeting horns, find secret passages hidden by tapestries, hop across ornate chandeliers, and navigate past the pouring lava as it attempts to impede your siege. Also, there's a bunch of dirt. Oh no, I got there. The castle must have really fallen into disrepair or something. But hey, I got a shovel.
Easily one of the highest points of praise I have for this game is the way that it introduces unique platforming concepts while still managing to keep them within the theme of the stage.
Spectre Knight's stage takes you through a graveyard and a tomb with a spooky little town in the distance. Many sections are completely dark, and you have to rely upon sparse candlelight and the occasional lightning strike illuminating the remaining wall in order to cross the pit successfully. It fits well with the theme of the level, makes platforming tricky, and when you take into account the fact that enemies can attack you unseen in the shadows, it makes everything in the level a little spookier. Plague Knight's stage is supposed to be this creepy laboratory filled with potions and dangerously volatile creatures that can give you a lift and take the ground out from underneath you. But one detail I found quite interesting were the mutations of Shovel Knight running around in this section right here. It's almost like they're in these little dirt cages, put there by their creator. But as you pass by, they break free and run wild and begin to attack. I don't know, I thought that was pretty neat. Whether you're riding torpedoes and raise anchors in Treasure Knight stage, ah dang it, battling Vikings from an Aurora-spitting fountain in Polar Knight stage, that's so getting tossed around by air currents in Propeller Man stage,
I'm done.
you'll find awesome puzzles that fit well with their environment. Now the Megaman series has a lot of what I mentioned above. Those games are very well known for their awesome soundtracks. You had your epic intro tunes to get your attention, your energetic Dr. Wily themes to motivate you, and your Proto Man's theme to make you feel a little something. You see these poorly made patchwork junk robots in one of the last Dr. Wily stages, and they are the only enemy between you and the final bosses of the game. It gives the feeling that Dr. Wily began to panic that you were advancing deeper into his lair, and threw these together at the last possible second. That's cool, but some of the other stages just aren't as creative. You got a snake man, so throw in some snakes. You got a top man, so throw in some tops. And maybe a kitty with fleas. But what are these places? Yeah, there are light beams here, and they're tough to avoid, but why? And what does Quickman have to do with it, other than the fact that you gotta go fast? Why is Gemini Man hoarding a bunch of little ghost eggs in a space world? What are these? In Shovel Knight, each level is memorable and gives you the feeling that you're actually journeying deep into impressive castles, the murky depths of the ocean, and lost cities buried beneath the ground, and more. Gameplay. Let's take a second to talk about video games on a very general level. What makes video games special when compared to other mediums of entertainment is that they are interactive. Your actions as a player fulfill the narrative depending on what decisions you make as a player, and ultimately how well you can overcome the challenges. And challenge is very important to the gaming narrative. If you paid attention in your middle school English class, you'd know that nearly every story arc follows some pattern of exposition of the plot, rising action, climax, falling action, and resolution of the conflict. The challenge of a game is what the player hopes to overcome in order to resolve the conflict of the narrative. The more successful the challenge, the more successful the game.
Now, when I call a challenge successful, I don't mean to say that the hardest games are the best games.
Super Ghouls' Ghosts is one of my favorite classics of the SNES, but good lord is that game difficult. The game basically requires you to try and fail over and over again to learn the correct way of navigating the level, and if you mess up, it's back to the start. Now, trial and error is a legitimate way of learning. We realize, hey, taking down this wall with my forehead isn't making as much progress as this sledgehammer. Super Ghouls' Ghosts says, nah man, using your forehead is the way to go, seeing as we've tied your arms and legs down. You just don't want it badly enough.
This system can be infuriating and alienating to players, and it certainly isn't fun for everybody.
Easy games can have the same effect though. Take a game like Pokemon. Now I love Pokemon, but playing through the story mode is so boring. You get so much lunch money from all the trainers you beat, you can afford to hook up your Pokemon to an IV drip filled with revives and potions, and if that fails, just grind them to infinity. And let's suppose your Pokemon, your beloved comrades and companions that you've raised to fight by your side, die in battle. Just take them to this magical machine, resuscitate them free of charge. You could be strategizing each move, taking into account type effectiveness, the items your opponent's Pokemon is holding, the possible moveset of your opponent, and consider the opportunity cost of each decision you make. Or you could just press A. Yeah, that'll do it. Easy games can be just as alienating as difficult games because your goals and the conflict that gets in the way of achieving them suddenly lose all of their weight.
In developmental psychology, a theorist named Lev Vygotsky coined a concept called the zone of proximal development. The idea is, we learn poorly when we cannot complete tasks on our own, and when we can complete tasks with no assistance whatsoever. But there's this cool middle ground where learning is at its maximum potential, where we are challenged just enough without becoming overwhelmed, and may just need the slight nudge from a teacher to figure things out.
Good games are designed to find the same balance, challenging the player enough to maintain their interest and improve the gaming narrative, but providing enough assistance through level design so that the player is well equipped to take on those challenges.
And Shovel Knight nails that balance.
As a result, there isn't a single section of the game that I didn't feel prepared to overcome. I still died a whole bunch, believe me, but every time that happened, it was due to a careless move on my part or a variable that I had forgotten to take into account.
The game very gradually immerses you into its core mechanics and teaches you exactly what you need to know about the game without excessive amounts of trial and error, grinding, or hand-holding.
And it doesn't teach you through any dumb fourth wall breaking tutorials either. You learn exactly what you need to know for each challenge just by playing the game. Let's look at the first level of the game and assume you've never played a game before. Shovel Knight flips in heroically, you hear that awesome music kick in, you headbang a little bit, but the screen remains static. Nothing approaching from either direction. But you're drawn to this pile of glinting dirt visible over to the right. After a little experimentation with the controls, you've learned that pushing the B button repeatedly will clear all the debris and reveal some treasure.
Give me all that money!
You've noticed that the screen has also followed you to the right and seems to continue on in that direction. So you've learned a couple of different things here. You can use your shovel to dig stuff, and you can move to the right to advance. You move to pick up all that treasure and... Whoa my gosh! Here comes a beetle! So if you've seen anyone play Mario, you might be tempted to jump on top of the beetle to stop it. But you just take damage. So if you can't squish him with your feet... There you go. You proceed on with your newly found beetle flipping abilities, discover a new type of dirt block that you can break with your shovel, and after moving far enough to the right, you come across your first deadly bottomless pit in the game. It's pretty easy to navigate across, and you'll notice that there are no enemies to prevent you from making the jump. Trust me, there'll be plenty more of that later. In the very next room, you see two of those dirt blocks from earlier, blocking your path, but you aren't able to hit them from the side this time. You experiment with the controls, maybe jump on top of them to force them down a bit, maybe... Ooh. You just learned how to use the Pogo Hop. You know that it can clear obstacles below you, and that it can defeat enemies from above. But wait, there's more. You move on to the next screen, and there's a big ledge, and a big bubble slowly rising from below. Now, it's pretty natural to assume that bubbles are friendly. I mean, no one ever got hurt by bubbles. Megaman even had a platforming segment where you could ride bubbles up to higher levels. So let me just see if I can... Ow! No. Bubbles hurt. But wait, I could use my Pogo Hop to bounce off dirt and enemies. What happens if I bounce off this bubble? Oh my gosh. And here the Pogo Hop becomes fully realized. Not only is it essential for clearing obstacles and taking out enemies, but it's also essential for platforming. Now you're moving on with all this crazy knowledge and you're faced with, whoa, that guy's huge. And he's blocking the stairs. And he shoots bubbles. Lots of bubbles. Bubbles hurt, remember? But wait, it's no problem. You know exactly how to deal with the bubbles, and you know a good way of taking out this opponent safely. After about a minute and a half of gameplay, you learn, no better yet, you teach yourself how to use your shovel blade to dig for treasure, attack enemies, clear obstructions, discover secret areas, toss projectiles, pogo on top of enemies, and boost yourself onto hard-to-reach platforms. That's a lot of utility for a little shovel. And the challenges in which you're able to use these skills gradually progress in difficulty, but not to the point of becoming overwhelming. Not too easy, not too difficult, just right. This quality of level design carries on well throughout the entirety of the game. Now, Megaman did the exact same thing with its level design, and Megaman did it 25 years ago. Here in Magnet Man Sage, you got these little electromagnets that pull you in close, and these little eyeballs with feet, but you learn how to get through it. You move on a little bit and you see these platforms that fade in and out every so often, and you learn how they work. Next, you're put into a situation where you have to deal with the electromagnets and the disappearing platforms at the same time. And if you fall off, don't worry, man. There's a nice soft floor to cushion your fall. In the next section, however, you're faced with the electromagnets and the platforms, but there's a bottomless pit under you now. If you were faced with this challenge at the start, it would have been pretty tough, and you probably would have needed to spend a few lives figuring out the timing of the platforms and the pull of the electromagnet. But thanks to a little clever level design, you were given all the tools you needed to overcome that challenge.
So here we have these two brilliantly and thoughtfully created games that provide challenges that are difficult yet accessible due to their methods of teaching the player through their game design. However, they differ quite a bit in how they challenge the player and what tools they provide to achieve the goals of the game.
In Shovel Knight, enemies are often fought in very close quarters, and you receive a great amount of knockback from getting hit by enemies, and sometimes even when hitting enemies with your own attacks. To mitigate this issue, you acquire a wide range of relics, a couple of which are based off of the items in Castlevania. Now, some of these items are a little gimmicky, some of them just waste your magic, and some of them are just plain bad. But I did use about half of the relics pretty regularly over the course of the game. The relics can provide numerous different angles of approach to a platforming section. None of them are game-breaking, as even the awesome Propeller Dagger and Phase Locket could get you killed if you use them incorrectly. By far the most useful mechanic in Shovel Knight is the Pogo Hop. Not quite as useful as in DuckTales, because that was the whole game, but still pretty freaking useful. Not only can Shovel Knight use this ability to attack from above, but it also allows Shovel Knight to ascend a little bit higher. And because you can platform and attack at the same time with the Pogo Hop, it's very easy to flow from platforming to combat and back to platforming again. But it's not insanely overpowered either, as some enemies in the game are either armored from the top or can anticipate your Pogo Hops, requiring you to come up with a different approach from your toolkit. This gives Shovel Knight excellent flow of gameplay and very nuanced combat. By comparison, Mega Man's gameplay is a lot more straightforward. He jumps, he shoots. Then he slides a little bit. Even the abilities he acquires from the Robot Masters are a variation of a ranged projectile for the most part. He had a couple of melee abilities too, but those sucked. I mean, don't talk about those. The challenge of the game comes from the sheer volume of enemies on screen at any point in time, requiring the player to make use of those range attacks to attack safely from a distance, and use precision jumps and slides as enemies close in.
Both Mega Man 3 and Shovel Knight are a lot of fun to play, but Shovel Knight has more variety in its tools, allowing you to approach challenges in more unique ways than can be found in the Mega Man games, with greater fluidity and without causing the game to feel cumbersome or overwhelming.
These differences can be highlighted through their respective boss battles. To illustrate, let's compare the rival battles in Mega Man and Shovel Knight. Here's Proto Man. Here's Dark Knight, and whoa! Energy Beast, hey, let me hit one at a time. Oh my god, whoa! Okay, he's downstabbing. Wings? What? Okay, got a couple of hops in there. Fire from the skies! Holy sh! Hey, Proto Man. All right, so he's digging some mystical earth right there. Hey, listen, he's flying and he's downstabbing. Wow, that is a very explosive downstab. You're shooting above me, Proto Man. I'm down here. What? In Shovel Knight, each boss has a large array of attacks at their disposal and is able to use them in any order, resulting in varied and unpredictable encounters. In contrast, Mega Man's boss battles are very predictable and limited in their range of attacks. On top of that, they can be beaten in 5 or 6 shots if you're playing the game with its intended mechanics. And some of the fights are just plain broken.
Is he here? How about here? Oh man, almost had him that time.
You know, I just feel bad for him. He's not hurting a fly, and for a frog boss, that's saying a lot. Shovel Knight and Mega Man 3 also differ quite a bit in terms of their pacing. When you start up Mega Man 3, there's no introductory level. Instead, there are 8 different stages with 8 different bosses to choose from, and you're free to choose the order of your progression. This worked very well for the Mega Man games, because each boss was weak against another boss's ability. So you're able to decide for yourself which boss could be taken out easily with your normal weapon, and proceed to take out the rest in a game of rock, paper, scissors. Or you could just play your favorite stages first. I don't know. The point is, you had that freedom. Well, as a result of setting up the first 8 stages like this, they all have to be relatively balanced with each other in difficulty. In contrast, Shovel Knight breaks up into 5 different sections. The intro teaches you the basics of a game in a very easy stage, allowing for a great amount of accessibility for those who are unfamiliar with action platformers. Then the overworld map opens up and leaves you to tackle 2 easy bosses, 3 moderate bosses, 3 harder bosses, and then finally the Tower of Fate, the hardest stages of the game. With each new section, the difficulty of platforming puzzles, combat, and boss battles increases. By the end of the game, the difficulty reaches and surpasses the challenge of many games in the Mega Man series. And if you're looking for more of a challenge, you can choose to play the game without checkpoints and play Game Plus mode, in which you take double the damage, have access to only half as many checkpoints, and all the Castlevania-inspired wall meat that used to serve as one of your only major sources of health turns into bombs. Basically, in Mega Man you can expect a much more consistent challenge throughout, while in Shovel Knight the challenge of the gameplay comes a bit more gradually. And that's not entirely a bad thing. In my first playthrough of Shovel Knight, the difficulty always seemed to be increasing just a bit, and that made each new obstacle a little more interesting. With the occasional random mini-boss arriving on the world map, and the optional bonus levels along the way, there was never a moment while playing Shovel Knight that things felt tedious or monotonous. From start to finish, this game kept me engaged. There are a few moments in the game that I haven't mentioned yet that demonstrate how the pacing of Shovel Knight contributes quite a lot to its narrative. In a lot of the old classics for the NES, there's little to motivate the player to accomplish the goal of saving the princess or defeating Dracula or whatever, other than a general desire to play a video game. Those games had great gameplay, so there was enough motivation to keep me coming back for more, but Shovel Knight adds a little extra. At the end of each major section of the game, the hero occasionally falls asleep by the fireside, dreams of catching his beloved Shield Knight falling from the sky, and wakes from his sleep just before they are reunited. Each dream is accompanied by a somber, melancholic tune, and gentle rainfall, which helps set the tone for the only truly serious moment of the game. In the first dream near the beginning of the quest, it was just you and Shield Knight, but as the game progresses in difficulty, enemies begin to show up in Shovel Knight's dreams. They attack you from both sides, trying to impede you from catching Shield Knight. The further you progress, the more powerful and numerous the enemy forces become. The later dreams fill the screen with more enemies than you've ever had to encounter at one time before. Each recurring dream gives the feeling that the stakes have increased, and each day your goals have become even more daunting and difficult to achieve. And this is reflected in the rest of the gameplay as well. But no matter how many enemies show up on screen, you're compelled to catch Shield Knight before she falls. The dream always ends just before you can reach her. Leaves you with a sense of unfinished business. Makes you feel a little something. How do you resolve it? You play the game. You beat those bosses, you face the challenges on your way to the final goal, you climb the tower, and you find out what happens. In this manner, games become more than a test of skill to pass the time. They become adventures. Is Shovel Knight a perfect game? No.
But it's a dang good one. Not all the elements fit. Some of the items in Shovel Knight's toolkit did not see much use outside of the sections of the game for which they were designed.
It's not breaking a whole lot of new ground, but it does an excellent job combining the best elements of games like Mega Man, The Adventure of Link, Castlevania, Super Mario 3, and DuckTales, while adding a bit of charm, personality, fluidity, and cohesion.
The game drew me in with its powerful soundtrack and beautiful artwork, kept me challenged through its engaging platforming puzzles, combat and level design, gave me a compelling goal from the start that held my interest for the duration of the game, and it impressed me with its payoff in the end. It's doubtful that this game will cause anywhere near the splash that the classics did, but Shovel Knight was truly one of the most enjoyable gaming experiences I've had in a long time. Mega Man 3 will always be one of my favorites, but honestly, I think I enjoyed playing Shovel Knight just a little bit more. So I guess the last thing I can really say about this game is, I dig it.
God, no! Why did you say that? Don't! No! Oh my God!
Hey guys, thank you so much for watching this video. This is the first review I've ever written, so please comment down below with your feedback. And hey, if you enjoyed this video, hit that old subscribe button and watch me and my buddies play some video games. It's a pretty good time.